welcome back to the second podcast, 5 Squared, business consulting, business coaching. You know, one of the things that I sit down with people a lot, especially now because we're coming to the end of 2016, going into 2017, is goals. Goals. And generally people think goals are a dirty word. A lot of times people think goals are akin to the New Year's resolutions, which I can't stand. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what is a goal, how does it differ, how do you get the most out of yourself, and I'm going to kind of just go into one of my stories about goal setting that I take. So there's a couple things that you have to have when you set a goal, right? You might want to write this down or just think about it. It's got to be time bound. So, you know, people have always said, and I'm sure everybody's heard the quote, well, if you don't write it down, it's still a dream, which is true. It's true. But I still think it's a dream if you don't follow this kind of formula, if you will, to making it achievable. So the first thing is it's got to be an actionable thing. You've got to be able to assign activities to achieve a goal, right? I'll go through a couple of these and then we'll come back to them. You have to have them time bound. Okay, when are you going to achieve that goal? They've got to be a doable goal, and we're going to talk about that. Then they have to be measurable, right? You got to be able to measure the goal, and then you got to create something where you got to create leverage on yourself to complete the goal. And we're going to go through each one of these. So let's talk about it being measurable. So a little bit about myself. A couple years ago decided out of the blue that I was overweight, and I decided I was going to do an Ironman because I don't do anything little. Most of my friends will attest to that. They're like, if you're going to do something, Tim, you go big or go home. But I wanted something, more for myself to say, hey, I can get back on the training and give myself something to work towards. And that's something that's leverage on yourself. If you start thinking about it, achieving something great, that's a little bit of leverage. So when I started down this path, I said, well, all right, in order to keep myself leverage, I've got to I need to sign up for a race. So I didn't sign up for a race in May. This is, I signed it up for late September, I believe. And so I said, all right, now I have a goal to do this Ironman. It's 9 months later. There's a lot of work that's got to go into this, but it's there. So again, I time bound it. It was doable, and people are like, well, what's a doable goal? So let's talk about that for a second. So if anybody's seen me in late 2013, they would have said, there's no way you can do an Ironman. Just not possible. You're too out of shape. You're too fat. I mean, heck, I had a blog called the Fat Man 5s, or Fat Man Training. I forget what it was now. But, it was all about overweight guys just trying to make their life a little better. And, but it was a doable goal because a lot of people do it, right? You look at, I watch some videos on YouTube. You see people of all shapes and sizes finishing the line, crossing the line. And I'm like, you know what? If those people can do it, I can do it. So it's very doable. And then the last thing is that you got to be able to put action to it, which was what we're going to talk about. But, to take a dream and turn it into a goal, it's really those couple of things. It's got to be time bound. You got to create leverage on yourself. You have to be able to measure your progress towards that goal, and doable. And most goals are doable. And then it comes down to your ability to withstand the storm, as I like to say. So, if we come back to my Ironman example, out of shape, I'll tell you a funny story real quick about that. So I had all the components of the goal, and then I had to break it down because I couldn't swim. And so I decided, all right, what's the next thing? The next goal to achieve this is that it's got to be, I got to figure out how to swim. So I went to a master's class at the local Y, went in, swam a lap. The coach was like, well, good news and bad news, Tim. Bad news is you can't swim. Good news is you ain't afraid of drowning. And it was profound because he said, well, the fact that you're not afraid of drowning means I can train you. You're willing to put your head in the water. You're willing to get this done. And that's an important point when we talk about goals. How willing are you to throw everything you've got at it, especially if it's a big, hairy, ugly goal, right? So when we look at these things, we start to think in terms of the various steps. I've been a cyclist for years, so I wasn't worried about the biking. Ran in high school, so I was like, well, I know I can run, and in the scheme of the race, I know if all else fails, I can walk or crawl across the finish line. So, I started to break this big goal down into sub goals and got it done. The other thing about goal setting that's important is that you can't focus on too many goals at one time, especially if they're huge. And I'm not talking about making a list of items to do. I'm not talking about to do items. I'm talking about goals, right? So when I'm coaching people, and generally there's a couple big areas that people need to focus on in their lives. And if you read any book out there, it's work related, it's personal related, or it's relationship or spiritual related, right? So on the work front, per quarter, pick one or two. You don't want to be working on 17 goals simultaneously, because it's another way to deleverage yourself. Like, well, I'm not going to work on that goal because I'm working on this other one, and then none of them get done, and you're back here at the end of 2017 with nothing accomplished. So from a business perspective, you need to take a look at which ones are going to provide the most bang for the buck. Where's the biggest hole in your organization? Is it revenue? Is it getting a better EBITDA? Is it hiring? Is it opening a new factory? And really be diligent and focused on doing that. Much like doing the Ironman, I was focused. I didn't really focus on much else that year, from a personal perspective. So you got to focus in on a few goals at a time. And generally, I break those into quarters. Most goals can be done in a quarterly or half-year fashion for a lot of people. Obviously, that comes to depending on the goal. We talked about leverage, all right? So what is leverage? So when I was doing the Ironman, I focused on it. All right, that was one of the main personal goals I had for the year, so I didn't have 15 other goals. And there was a lot of benefits from doing that. I lost weight, I got in shape, so those were not goals. My goal was to do the Ironman and to have those as byproducts of that goal. But getting leverage on yourself is something that is paramount, because if you don't have leverage on yourself, you're not going to do it, and you're going to stop as soon as it gets hard, right? It's why people that say they're going to go to the gym at the first of the year, and they start going, the gyms are packed, and then by February 15th, they're empty. It's because most people don't have leverage on themselves. So when I was doing the Ironman, I did a couple things. I got my family involved, right? Because I have two younger kids. I don't want them to see dad fail, right? And their dad just give up. I told my coworkers, I actually invested in a coach. Again, all of those to keep me held accountable, to keep me motivated, to keep me getting out of bed every morning when I had to go to the pool, those sorts of things, to make sure that I had leverage on myself. Now, there's a risk to doing that in that case, right? If you tell somebody you're going to do something and then don't do it, then you immediately your credibility drops. So you got to have that wherewithal to understand that there's a little bit of risk with that. Now, obviously, things happen and change, people move, whatever. But when you're going out, you don't want to be the guy or woman that says, "Hey, I'm going to go do something," and never does it, because that just crushes your own credibility. So, in this case, measurable goals, right? If you want to lose weight, how much and when? It's got to be time bound. When? And you got to create leverage on yourself. I'm going to go out and lose this 25 pounds. I'd like your support. I'd like you to, be my confidant while I'm doing this, and help motivate me on days that I don't feel like doing it. So all ways to keep leverage on yourself. So we are setting up some seminars in 2017 that we'll be publishing shortly. So one of these will be on goal setting. It's a several-hour workshop that we'll be running. So you can check out 5 Squared in the coming weeks and see the schedule for that. And there's formulas on how to keep yourself motivated, how to keep yourself, how to build that leverage on yourself, which is a great thing, and how to organize these and prioritize goals going forward. So, been a pleasure. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next podcast.